Scottish user group. So please bear with me. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to build a responsive application implementing a few components and hopefully build a responsive screen. A little bit about myself. I'm a senior Office 365 consultant, just started a new job with Capgemini. My background is I've always been involved in automation. I started my career using Excel, Visual Basic, Microsoft Access, etc. And I started to get into the Power Platform about 4 years ago. I was building some dashboards in Excel, and I started looking at switching these across to Power BI. So that got me introduced to the Power Platform. I started looking at Power Automate a little bit, and then I got into Power Apps quite a bit actually. In my previous company, I was actually employed to do Power BI, but they weren't quite ready for me to do Power BI. They weren't quite set up, so I started building a few Canvas apps, and it took off from there for me. Really, I didn't actually build any Power BI dashboards. I just sort of worked on Canvas apps for the rest of my time with that company. Yeah, I've also looked into a little bit of robotic process automation using something called UiPath, and I'm quite excited to get involved in Power Automate Desktop as well and have a look at the RPA features of Power BI Desktop. Hobbies: I'm into fell running, cycling. I spend my weekends running around the Lake District, running around the hills of Lancashire, getting involved in a few races there. There's usually, when COVID's not around, there's usually quite an active fell running scene in Lancashire, so I like to take part in some of those. Okay, a little bit about today's demonstration. I'm going to try and do a Matt Collins-Jones style walkthrough of building a responsive application. That means that the layout of the application adjusts to the size of the screen. So if it's a desktop application, all of the controls and features on the application will adjust to the desktop size. And if for example the application opens in a mobile device, the screen will respond and the features, the controls will sort of appear as a mobile phone device. I'll show you that in a moment. I've started to tinker about with components. So I've set up a previous worked example where I've used components. So hopefully we'll be able to use components as we're working through the demonstration as well. I'm going to pop onto my next slide. Oh, yes, hopefully this comes up. This is a risk management application that I built in my previous company. Basically, we were managing risks through spreadsheets. This is the main risk gallery. I'm sorry, I've just moved jobs, so I haven't copied the application over completely, so I can't really click through the screens. But we have a risk gallery here, and the crux of it really is anybody in the risks team would enter a risk onto a project, and a risk manager would go ahead and say, yeah, okay, that's a reasonable risk. I'm going to approve that risk. So it was a bit of an approval system as well as a sort of a risk management tool. So we had some approvals going on other screens. Here's the basic risk gallery. You got your risk, you got your project phase, you got your scoring. Risk can have any number of associated actions. This is leading into why we need to build things responsively. So yeah, basically here's the risk application. I have the data entry form, and risks have associated actions. Actions also needed updating as well by the action owner. So for example, we have a risk here, and we can attach any number of associated actions to that risk and assign owners. The owners would then have another screen in the app where they could go in and look at their actions and they could approve them. The company really liked the application. We built it in tablet form, as you can see. We had the risk gallery, we had 5 or 6 other screens. We had the form, and they wanted to move the approval process into a handheld device So basically, you could approve risks. Risk managers could approve the risks from the mobile device, and action owners could go ahead and click through their actions. I've got a load of test data in here. They could go through their actions and click on an action and either close that out or add a comment. The problem was, about 2 years ago in Power Apps, before containers came along, you had to be very smart if you wanted to build a responsive application and lay out all your controls. It would have been a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. But as everybody knows, you made a decision when you decided. You made a decision on the screen size of the app at the very start. You're either going to build a tablet application or you're going to build a phone application. We ended up building 2 applications, so we had the full system in tablet format, and we had the approval section in on the mobile devices. Okay, so that was sort of 2 years ago. I think it was October 2020. Containers were introduced, and these really simplified the build process for responsive applications. If you think of a container as a responsive boundary, and that boundary becomes apparent to all of the controls in that boundary, I'll demonstrate that as we do the walkthrough. Okay, purpose of the demonstration that I'm going to hopefully walk through, we're going to build a responsive barebone screen relay made up of 5 containers. I've got the main container, which is the parent, and this sits right around the outside. We have a header, we have a side navigation, we also have the workspace area here that sits nicely below the header and slightly off to the side of the side navigation, and we have the footer. I've made those out of 5 containers. Like I say, the purpose of the responsive application is when you open the application, it detects what screen size you're in, and it moves the controls accordingly. So for example, if we're in the desktop application, this side navigation panel will stay on the left, and the buttons will stay on the left. If we're in the mobile device, we detect the screen size and we sort of get rid of the side panel. We make the workspace adjustable to the space that the side panel took up, and I've sort of moved what would be the side navigation into the footer here. So that's what we're going to try to achieve. I've been practicing this for the last 2 hours, so hopefully it'll go quite well. May not. Lots of components. I've used components. I've said here it's a reusable set of controls that has input and output properties. So basically, we try to build this once with a component as a component, and then we can use it across many screens. And the input properties, I've only used the input properties on this one, but basically, we've made the width of this flexible to what the user, to the values that to the dimensions that the user would like to see. Same with the footer, and same with the header. Let's just cross over to Power Apps. Everything okay so far?
It is, yeah. It's great.
I haven't been on mute for the last 10 minutes, have I? No. Okay, no. Great. Okay, here's what I built earlier. We're not going to build. Might not be quite as sophisticated as this, but basically, I've built a responsive application with the 5 containers that I mentioned, and I've built it as a component. So with components, you get the input and output properties. I'll just give you a quick demo of what I mean, how we can use the input and output properties. So for example, okay, we've got this screen, we've got the side nav here, we have the footer here. We might want to, we've now built the component, we've got all of the input properties down the side here. We might want to add it to another screen. Let's insert a screen and let's add the component. There you go. We can use that component across many screens. We've built it once. On one screen, we might want to trigger a pop-up menu here, where we click this button and the side navigation value will change. So that might increase to, say, 200. The buttons could disappear, for example, and we could have some filters here, for example. And as you'll notice, the workspace area, which is responsive, has adjusted. We've kept that nice width. I've put a little padding variable in here, a padding input value in here, and everything adjusts accordingly. You might need a screen where you don't want a side navigation. You just want the header, the working area, and the footer. You might not need a footer on there. So what you can do is you can paste it onto your next screen, and it's quite flexible. Let's put the side navigation back there. There we go. So what happens next is the responsive side of the application is I'm going to go into play mode and I'm going to adjust the screen. So as you saw then, I've gone into play mode. I'm playing the application, and the screen sort of adjusted to the size of the parent screen. As we shrink the application down, as we head towards the mobile experience, as if you were opening this in a mobile experience, what's going to happen is this side panel is going to appear here. We're going to adjust the size of the footer to a set amount, something that's reasonable to hold these buttons. And what else happens is, as we shrink it down, this logo may be too big for a mobile experience. So what I've done is I've swapped out the logo to a smaller one, and this is all detected on the screen size. So what's happened there is the side navigation, it's detected that we're in a mobile screen, and it's dropped right to the bottom there. Okay, let's have a go at building this as a component. I'm going to be ambitious and build it as a component. When I was practicing, I was just building it responsive, and then I realized that I'd signed up to build it as a component. So I'm going to have a go at this as a live demo. So please bear with me. Okay, the first thing to do when we are building responsive screens is to go into File, Settings, Screen Size and Orientation, and we need to ensure that this Scales to Fit is set to Off. This is quite a good description. Turning this off allows the layout to adjust to the available space, allows control layout to adjust to the available space. So what that means is whatever space the screen takes up, all of the controls, be it containers, components, will adjust to that screen size. So that's pretty key. That's key to working with a responsive application. Okay, I'm going to go into components now. I'm going to build this as a component. I'm going to close down my previous efforts. I'm going to delete that one. Okay, so I'm going to add a new component, and I'm going to name this component. I'm going to prefix it with COM because it's a component, and I'm going to name it COM responsive screen. Okay, that will do. When you set up a component for the first time, the width and height is set to 640. So what we need to do is we need to set the width and height to be the width and height of the actual app. So I'm going to click on the width here. I'm going to in the width property, I'm into the properties here. In the width property, I'm going to set it to app.width. There you go. So whatever size the application that we drop the component into, the width of the component will adjust to the size of that app. Let's do the same for the height. App.height. There we go. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, so what's happened there is the component has assumed the width and the height of the application that we would drop the component into. Next, I'm going to add my first container. Now, if you remember, containers are key to responsive applications. So we go into the side menu here. We look in layout. We find containers in layout, and we're not going to bother with horizontal and vertical containers. I'm just going to use a standard container. Pop that onto the screen there. This is going to be our parent container. This is going to be our main container. We're going to nest the header, the side navigation, the footer, and the workspace containers within this container. So I'm going to make this a grey color. There we go. So we know this is the parent container. I'm going to name it CON parent. No, I'm not. I'm not calling it parent. I'm calling it main, and I'm calling it main 1 because I've used main in my previous components. So I've named the container main 1. This is the parent container. Okay, I need to set the X coordinate of this container so it's hugging the left side of the app. So I'm going to set that to 0, and I'm going to set the Y coordinate to 0 as well. Okay, so the container is now sitting in the top left hand corner. I'm going to make the width of the parent container, I'm going to make it the width of the parent, and the parent is the component. So the width of the parent container has assumed the width of the component size. I'm also going to set the height of the parent container to the parent.height to the component height. There we go. Okay, we've got our main parent container now. We're going to nest the other containers inside this container. Okay, everybody okay so far? Yep. Okay. I'm going to now add another container inside the main container. So at this point, this catches me out quite a bit. I need to nest the header container. We're going to put the header container in now. I need to nest the header container inside the main container. So make sure that you select the main container. Back to the layout menu. Let's add another container. Okay, back to the tree view. As you can see, it's nested inside the main container. So this is a child container of the main parent container. Okay, so I'm gonna color this white. This is going to be the header. So we'll call this con header 1. Okay, there we go. Like the main parent container, I'm going to hook this to I'm going to make this hug the left hand side and the top right hand corner, so I can set the X coordinate to 0. I can set the Y coordinate to 0 as well. Okay, we want the width of the header to take up the full screen. So again, I'm going to set the parent.width. I'm going to set the width of the header container to be the parent.width. Okay, and that assumes the same width as the main container, the main parent container. Okay, I'm going to give the header a height of, say, 80. I like 80 for a header height. There we go. But this is where we start to use the input properties of components now. It'd be nice if the height of the header could be adjusted by the user when they drop it into a screen. So let's click on the whole component actually. So we go to the breadcrumb trail here. We select the whole. No, let's do it. Sorry, let's do it from the tree view. I'm going to select the whole component. So we've got the component selected now. And as you can see, components have properties. They have input properties and output properties. What I'm going to do, I'm going to set a property called layout header height, which means that we can adjust, we can offer the user the option when we put the container onto a screen to adjust the header height. So I prefix any of my component properties with what it's actually affecting, and most of these properties are going to be affecting the screen layout. I then put a downpipe symbol, and then I put the name, and the name of this property is header height. Okay, it's an input property. That means that the user can type in the values. Output properties are sort of where you want to get information out of the component. For example, I had the navigation on the side on this screen. Bear with me. On this component, clicking that would give you an output property. It would say filter, for example. I'm not going to get into output properties today. I'm just going to stick with what I know really, and the input properties. So we didn't do it because I got distracted. Okay, I'm going to set the input property of the component, layout header height. That is going to be a number because we're going to put a height value into that. Create that. It sets it to a default value of 100. And what I want to do now is I want to click on the header container, and I want to set the height of the header to be the input property, the height input property of the component. So I'm on the height property of the header. I then go column res screen, which is, I name the component. I then dot notation it to dig into the properties, and this is where I find the input property that I've just created, layout header dot height. I then set that. We can while we're building components, we can actually view them on screen as well. So bear with me. I'm just going to set up a new screen, and I'm going to drop our work in progress component in there. There it is. So we've got the main container. We've also got the header input, and as you can see, I can now adjust that to 80. I can make it huge, 200, and that adjusts according to the input property value. Okay, back to the component. I'm now going to add the side navigation menu in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the header. I'm going to Control-C that to my clipboard. I'm not just going to go and paste it. I'm going to make sure that I select the main container, and I'm going to click paste now. So that ends up nested in the main container. Okay, So this is the side navigation bar. So I'm going to name it side container. Container side nav. Container side nav. Drat, we've used that name. Con side nav 1. Okay, now this is going to be the side navigation panel container. I'm going to make it purple, so it's a little bit different from the header. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to park it at the top. I'm going to set the the Y coordinate. I'm going to set the height first. So I'm going to set the height of the side navigation to take up the full height of the parent. There we go. I'm going to put a width value in of 80. We're going to make this width value part of the component. So we're going to make that an input variable so that this width can be adjustable. But for now, I'm just going to set it to 80. Okay. As you can see, the height needs a bit of work. It is we set it to the full height of the parent container. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the height of the header, the height of the value that's been put into the component's input value for the height of the header. So again, we reference the component, we then dot notation it, and we find the header height, and we know the header height is 80. So it's actually got the correct height now. It's taken off the header height off the parent height. Sorry, we've got a little bit of a problem with the Y coordinate now. So we need this to be underneath the header, if you will. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this part of the height formula, which is the reference to the component's input property header height. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to select the side nav, and I'm going to paste that into the Y coordinate of the side navigation container. And what that's done is it's detected the input value, and it's moved the side navigation bar below the header bar. Okay, let's pop a footer in there now. I'm gonna copy the header because it's set to the parent dot width. Actually, I'm not. Sorry. Rewind. I need to set the width of this side navigation. I need to set this to the to be adjustable by the user. So we need to set the another input property of the component. So I select the component again, click New Custom Property. Again, it's a layout property, so I prefix it with layout pipe, and I'm going to call this side nav width. Okay, perfect. It's an input property, and again, we want it to be a number. So there we go. Our component has another input property entitled layout side nav width. I select the side navigation bar now, and I click on the width, and I want to make the width of the side navigation bar adjustable based upon what the user puts into the input properties. So again, we reference the component, res screen. We've referenced the component, we dot notation into the properties, and there's our side navigation width. we can switch back to the screen and we can click the component and we can adjust that side navigation width now. There you go, could be a pop out. Might not want it visible at all, or you might just want it to be 80. Okay, is that okay so far? Yep. All right. I'm gonna copy the header now. We're now gonna do the footer container. So I'm gonna copy the header. I'm gonna select the main container again, and I'm gonna paste the header into the main container. I'm gonna name it con for container footer. There you go. And I'm gonna con footer it 1. I'm putting this 1 on the end because I've done a bit of a run through previously on this component, and I've named them all con footer, and I just put in the 1 on because if I don't, it will say we've already had this container name. So I'm putting a 1 on the end there. Okay, so the width of this footer is now the parent width, which is the main container. What I'm going to do, I want it to be, we want it to be the width of the main container, but we want it to be less the com res screen dot. We want it to be less the width of this of the side menu. And if you remember, we built a new input property into the component called layout side nav width that the user can adjust. Okay, so yeah, that's great. We've adjusted the footer size to be the parent size, take away the width of the side navigation, but it's still hovering over the side navigation. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this, I'm going to Control-C it, and I'm going to put that into the X value, which means the footer will now adjust to the width of the side navigation. So whatever width the side navigation is, whatever goes into the input property of the component, this footer will adjust. So if that's in sort of popped out mode where it's 200, this footer will shrink down because we've set the width to be the parent, take away the layout side nav width. Okay, we're gonna make the height adjustable to the component input properties in a moment, but we want the footer to sit right at the very, very bottom of the app. So we look at the Y coordinates, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to set the Y coordinate of the footer to be parent dot height. That pops it below the app. It's not what we want, but we know that the height of the footer is 80, soon to be sort of dynamic when we build it into the component input properties, but for now it's 80. So I'm going to minus a property called self, which means the footer. So we're using the footer self, we're using the footer dot height. So whatever height the footer is, we reference itself. So we're taking the height of the footer off the parent's height. Okay, we copied this from the header, so it's still got the header input properties in there from the component. What I'm going to do, I'm going to click the component again, and I'm going to set up a new input property entitled, sorry, it's a bit repeat this. I'm going to set up a new input property called footer height, and that is going to be a number. It's an input property, it's a number. I'm going to create that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the height of the footer to reference the component property that references the footer height. So I've referenced the component again. I've dot notationed in. I've dotted in, and we're going to use our new input property, which is layout footer height. Okay. Back to the main screen. We now have 3 properties. We've got header height, side nav width, and we've got footer height. I'm going to make that a reasonable footer height of 40. There you go. That looks a little bit better for footers. Okay, back to the component. I'm going to now build the workspace area. This part here where you could host your galleries, you could host your forms. It's basically the working area of the app. So I am going to copy the footer this time because we've got a good width on the footer because we've used it. We've built the properties off the side navigation. We've built the width off the side navigation, and we've built the X property off the side navigation. So I'm going to copy this. Control C. I've made the mistake. I copied it and pasted it right away without selecting the parent, the main parent container. So I'm just going to cut that, select the main container, and paste now. Okay, we're going to call this container con workspace 1. Okay, in it goes. Let's find it. It's hidden somewhere in the footer. Okay, there we are. What I want to do is I want to have a little bit of padding between the workspace and the header, the side nav, and the footer. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my component. I'm going to make a new custom property. Again, it's a layout property. I'm going to call it padding. And this is going to give us a little bit of space between each of the containers. Again, this is going to be a number, and I'm going to create this. There we go. Okay, it's set to 100 because all input properties default to 100. I'm going to change that to 10. 10 is a nice number for padding. Okay, so where am I? We have the workspace in place now. What I'm going to do now is, what am I going to do? Yes, I'm going to set the X coordinate of the workspace. I'm going to nudge it along a little bit so it's not sitting flush against the side navigation. And all I have to do there is click the plus sign, reference the component, and dot into my new property, which is padding. There we go. We've got a nice padding there. I'm quite happy with that. Something wrong with the width now. It's gone 10 pixels over, but we actually want it to be 20 less than what it is. So we get that 10. We get the 10 pixels on the right here. So let's click that. Let's click the width, and let's subtract the new padding input value of the component. There you go. That hasn't worked. Because I need to double that, so it's twice the padding. Okay, there we go. We've got that uniform distance on the left and right hand side. Have a quick look in the screen. Let's adjust it. Okay, yep. As we shrink the app down, we're maintaining that. We're maintaining that padding. The footer's moving along nicely. Everything's okay so far. Okay, back to the component. what I want to do now is I want to set the height of this workspace. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to the full height of the screen and take away from that. So not the full height of the screen, the full height of its parent, which is main. So I'm going to set it to parent.height, and that gives us quite a big workspace, but not to worry for now. I'm going to click on the Y property, and what I want the Y property to be is I want it to be the container header, the header container's height plus 10. So again, we've built the input properties into the component. So I'm going to find the component, comres screen dot height, not height, sorry, layout. We go to the property layout header height plus the component res screen dot padding, and that's going to add our padding of 10. Okay, so we've got the top bit right now. We've got that nice bit of padding. Big problems with the height. It's taking up the full height of the main container. So what I want to do is I want to take off the header height, whatever that may be, whatever they put into the input properties of the component. I want to take off the footer height. Okay, we're nearly there. And I want to take off the padding of the component as well. And that we still need to take another 10 off this. So I'm going to double the padding. Yep. Okay. That's all good. Okay, so I'm going to play the app in the screen, and what happens now is this workspace area will keep adjusting. Okay, I'm conscious I've waffled on a bit here, and I may run out of time. What I want to do next is I wanted to have this side navigation disappear and the footer turn blue, but I can talk you through what happens there if that's okay. I don't think I'm going to have time to build that functionality in, sorry.
Just take as long as you need, Jamie.
Okay, do you want me to go ahead and have a go at that then?
I'd be keen to see that, to be fair.
Yeah, if you're comfortable with it.
Yeah,
Okay.
do it.
Right, great, thanks. Okay, this is the bit that's probably going to trip me up, but I should be okay here. I wasn't going to do this bit, but that's okay. I've been practicing it this afternoon. Okay. Let's go to the screen. Okay, here's the app. I've clicked on the actual app, not any of the screens. And what an app has is something called size breakpoints. 600, 900, 1200. You can adjust these, and I'm going to pop a label into the app for now. Here we go. There's a label, and I'm going to copy some text that I prepared, and I'm going to pop that text onto the label, and this describes these size breakpoints. These are really important. So hopefully you can see that. I'll zoom in a little bit. Size breakpoints, we've got 600, 900, 1200. They can be adjusted. I don't bother touching those. I don't bother changing those. Basically, each number represents the size of the width of the screen. So 600 would be small, 900, anything between 600 and 900 would be medium. Anything between 900 and 1200 is large, and anything above 1200 is extra large. Okay, these sort of screen breakpoints have a, I'm going to call it a variable, but it's actually a number that represents it. So 600 would be 1, 900 would be 2, 1200 would be 3, a width of anything above 1200 would be 4. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a label here onto the screen. Here we go. And I'm going to put this formula in, app.ActiveScreen dot size, and that puts 4 in there because we're above 1200. Let's play the app and let's shrink things down a little bit. Okay, so we're less than 1200 pixels. We are less than 900, and then we're between 600 and 900. Might have got that wrong, but we're on a mobile now, and that 1 means we're on a mobile screen. So if we were to open the app up on a mobile screen, on a mobile phone, sorry, this variable would be, this value would be 1. If we're on a desktop, it opens up as 4. It detects what you've opened the app up as, on what screen. Okay, this is the bit that you need to remember. I need to remember. I need to get this bit right. I'm going to go back to my component now, and I'm going to set another input property entitled layout type screen size input, and I'm going to make that a number. Okay, I'm going to create that. Right, defaults to 100. I'm going to set it to 4, but we don't actually do anything in the component now. What we do, we go out to the screen. This is really important. We go out to the screen, we click the component, and what we do is we set this value, we set the new input value of the component for the screen size to parent, have I got this right? Hang on. Yes, I have, parent.size. Okay, there we go. Right, we've set our input property of the component to be the size of the screen. Okay, so I'll quickly demonstrate what happens, how we make the side navigation disappear now, based on whatever value the screen is on. Okay, so we go back into the component, we click on the side nav, we go into the, we're not going into the width, we're going into the visible. We're going to make it invisible if we're on a mobile device. We're going to make it completely disappear. So I'm going to write an if statement, and I'm going to refer back to the component now. I'm going to go com res screen dot layout screen size. So if the layout screen size is a mobile, i.e. 1, if it's 1, we are going to set the visible property of the side navigation to false. Or else, if it's anything but a mobile, we're going to set it to true. Okay, here goes, back to the screen, press play, we shrink the app down, and we're going to have all sorts of problems here because we haven't adjusted the footer or this workspace area. But what's going to happen is the side navigation has disappeared. Okay, we need to put all sorts of if statements into the footer now, and this into the workspace and the footer. let's try and do this as quick as I can. I've got my formulas ready. So the x coordinate of the footer, I'm going to pop an if statement in there, and the if statement says if the layout screen size variable that we've set is a 1, we want the x coordinate of the footer to be flush with this left-hand panel, or else we want it to do what it did last time. We want the x value to be the width of this side navigation bar. So that's going to work. I'm okay with that. I'm going to test it anyway. Press play. There we go. We've got another problem with the footer now. It's jumped to the left, but it's not filled the rest of the screen. So what I'm going to do is back to the component. I'm going to, what am I going to do? I'm going to select the width, and I'm going to say, I'm going to do an if statement. I haven't prepared this one earlier. If com res screen, if the component dot layout screen size is 1, mobile screen, we want it to fill the whole screen. We want it to be the parent dot width. So the size of the footer is going to assume the size of container main, which is the parent. So I'm going to put a comma in there. I'm going to close that off, and we'll play that. And we'll shrink this down. We're maintaining the padding, and that drops off. The side nav drops off. The footer adjusts accordingly. I think I'm going to pause there because it's 5 to 9. I got a bit carried away. Glad you've hung in there, guys. But basically, the other parts of the screen, like this navigation area, you just build your if statements. You build your if statements based on that screen size variable. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that wasn't too confusing. Hope you hung in there. Any questions there?
I'd like to say, first of all, well done. First presentation, I think you did fantastic. I think that was really interesting to see, and the fact you built that live is impressive. I mean, there's a lot of things that can trip you up along the way, so that was brilliant. I do have a question. Just in terms of that navigation that appears at the bottom. So do you have another component that you then make visible? Is that the solution that you're working on?
No, what I've done is I have a gallery here which is embedded into the component.
Mm-hmm.
I've got this container entitled con site nav and a gallery. And what I've done I haven't done anything with the gallery actually, because when the side navigation disappears, when that drops off, the gallery goes anyway, because the gallery is part of the container. So we don't have to worry about that. What I've got on the footer is a hidden gallery here.
All right, okay, yeah.
So as you can see, if the responsive screen size is 1, I make the hidden gallery visible. If not, I don't make it visible. So as we're shrinking this down, the side nav disappears here, and the gallery appears on the bottom. And basically, there's an if statement that turns the footer blue, and it sets the footer height to 60. And then you've got to adjust this thing with if statements based on which screen you're in. Same for the nice logo that I put together.
I like it. I love that.
Yeah, we've got a big logo and we've got a little logo. And basically, I've just done a switch statement here. So if the screen size input is 1, show the small logo. Anything else, we're on a big screen, so show the large logo.
Cool.
Yep. A lot depends on that screen input variable, the size variable, when you're trying to be responsive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hope that came across quite well. Maybe I bit off a bit more than I could chew. It was a bit long, but hopefully you learned a little bit there. And I got out my comfort zone presenting for once, because I haven't presented live for quite some time.